everyone! Yesterday when we read the Parker Inheritance, we stopped just before chapter 29, and Brandon had just told Candace that she needs to go home and finish reading the Westing game so that they can talk about some new clues that Brandon noticed. So that's where I'm going to start again on chapter 29. Chapter 29, Siobhan, Washington, August 9th, 1957. At 17 years old, Siobhan did indeed love all. But she loved Reggie Bradley the most. Siobhan hadn't taken Reggie very seriously at first. He was a boy, a distraction, a small bit of defiance toward her father. But as she got to know Reggie, she learned that he was more than just a boy, more than just one of her father's tennis players. He was smart, he loved math, and he loved to read too. He would sit at the park in the back, hidden from view, and would spend hours talking about books. Black Boy, Native Son, Invisible Man. They didn't always agree, but that was what made the conversation so interesting. She especially loved when Reggie got to the park before her, like today. The sun had almost set, but the park was full of kids. She stood behind a tree and watched as Reggie ran back and forth between 4 kids on the swings, pushing each as they yelled, "Higher, higher." Then he helped another child across the monkey bars, his hand slightly around her waist, ready to catch her if she fell. Siobhan had asked him once why he played with the kids. His reply, "'Cause I didn't have anyone to do it for me." Reggie checked his watch after the girl made it safely across the monkey bars. And that was when Siobhan stepped out from behind the tree. She made sure that Reggie noticed her, and she continued on farther to the park, beyond the playground and basketball courts, underneath the canopy of oak trees. She heard his footsteps a few minutes later. Even now, she still became giddy whenever he approached. He was tall and lanky, but he walked with purpose, like he had somewhere to be, like he was trying to do something with his life. She rose from her spot underneath the oak tree. "I'm glad you got my note," she said. She had left word for him at the shoe shine stand, but sometimes the other boys forgot to deliver the messages. He took her hand then, and they sat down in the grass. "Your turn or mine?" he asked. "Yours." Ever since their first meeting, they began their dates with a puzzle. Siobhan liked puzzles based on math. Reggie was more of a trickster. His riddles always had a twist. She leaned in as he began. "One night, a king and a queen boarded an empty ship," he told her. They set sail for France, sailing all day and night. When they landed, everyone on the boat went ashore. How many people got off the boat? Siobhan repeated the riddle in her head, trying to find the twist. Finally, she sighed. "I give up. 2?" He grinned. "Want a hint?" After she nodded, he said, "Think about the pieces of a chessboard." Siobhan closed her eyes and tried to picture the board. There's a king, a queen, a rook, a bishop, a knight. 3, she yelled. The king, the queen, and the knight. Spelled Knight. He pulled her closer to him. "Technically, you know I'm still winning, right? 20-18. Reggie had been keeping track of who had solved each puzzle over the last year. In some ways, he was just as competitive as her father. "Don't you know it's in your best interest to let your girlfriend win?" He was already leaning into her. "Well, maybe I can give you some bonus points." They kissed, but he pulled away after a few moments. "Where does Coach think you are this time?" he asked as he ran his fingertips across the bracelet circling her wrist. He had made it for her in shop class, for her birthday. He had been trembling so much when he handed her the small box he wrapped it in. And then, as soon as she opened it, he started complaining about how cheap and small it was, and how she deserved better. She finally had to kiss him so he would shut up. She loved the bracelet, and had worn it every day since he'd given it to her. "He thinks I'm at Ellie's," Siobhan replied. "She's on a date with a boy from the telephone company. She likes him. We'll see what happens." "Where are they going?" he asked. She made him a picnic. They're going to watch the stars out by Murray Creek. "A girl that brings food to her boyfriend?" His eyes crinkled as he grinned. "Does Ellie have a sister? Maybe I should see what she's doing next weekend." "Oh, hush." Siobhan slapped his arm. "You want me to make a picnic for you next time? A turkey sandwich, a plate of potato salad, a couple of Cokes, a big slice of apple pie? Wouldn't be too hard." She paused as Reggie's face turned to a frown. "What's wrong?" He sat back and shook his head. "Nothing." "Reggie?" "Really, it's nothing." He scratched a mosquito bite on his arm. "I just don't like Coca-Cola, that's all." She crossed her arms. Reggie, is this about the other day at the shoe shine stand? That was over a week ago. Well, you didn't have to drink it. What was I supposed to do? Give it back? She asked. And why are you worried? I'm here with you, not with him. He smiled and reached out to her again. He kissed the back of her hand. I'm sorry. It's just the way he dismissed me. I should have thrown that money right back in his face. But I know. She traced the fine freckles on his skin with her thumb. For Reggie, every little bit of money helped, even dimes and nickels. That's why he worked so many odd jobs. Shoe shiner during the day, busboy at one of the local bars at night, and even a janitor at Mount Carmel. Ironically, her father helped Reggie land some of those jobs, before he knew they were a couple, of course. It was all good work, but she knew Reggie felt it was beneath him. He was capable of so much more. He just needed a chance, just like every other Negro in Lambert. You ready for tomorrow? She asked him. He nodded. I'm going to cram that ball right down their throats, especially that Allen kid. He's the worst. Then he shrugged. Well, actually, they're all bad. Siobhan recalled the conversation she had overheard a few weeks ago between her parents, the day after her father challenged the Wallace team to the game. She had stood outside at the window and listened to her mother talk about the difference between vengeance and justice. Talking with Reggie was like reliving it all over again. She almost told him so, but she knew that would cause another argument. Then he kissed her again, and they both forgot about the tennis and soda pop and everything else in the world, at least for a little while. I have to go soon, Siobhan eventually said. I know. He took a deep breath. I had a dream last night. We were living in Chicago. I was working and you were in school. We had a small apartment, shabby furniture, a leaky sink, but it was all ours, and we were together. Siobhan pressed her hand against his cheek. Reggie. I know, but a fellow's allowed to dream, isn't he? I still think you should reconsider college. How can I afford to spend 4 more years in school when we need food on the table today? He asked. I can't do that to Grandma. But you could make so much more money if... Says who? The only place paying decent money to Negroes around here is the city, and last I checked, I didn't need a college degree to collect trash or dig ditches. What about the military? I don't want you to go away, but if you really need the money... Remember Vic Draper? Big as an ox, breath like a sewer, best linebacker on 1950 championship team. Anyway, he went into the Army, and you know what he's doing for them? Scrambling eggs and bacon biscuits. Reggie rested his head in his hands. You deserve better than a cook, better than a ditch digger. Reggie, I love you no matter what you do. She hugged him hard. Things will be different once I graduate. Daddy won't be this way forever. She didn't know how, but she had faith that everything would work out. She believed in them, even when Reggie didn't. But she couldn't carry the burden for both of them. She needed Reggie to believe it too. But instead of saying any of this, she just kissed him again, because sometimes that was easier than trying to come up with the words. Before you go, tell me that poem you like so much again, he said, still holding on to her. The Langston Hughes one. She squeezed him tighter, wishing she could make this moment last forever. Then she began to recite, I Too Sing America. Chapter 30. Finally, Brandon yelled as Candace entered his kitchen late Friday afternoon. You finished the book? He and Tori sat at the table with a platter of cookies in front of them. Yeah, it's so good, Candace said. Then she frowned. Except for the Who family. They were a little stereotypical. Yeah, good point. He rubbed his hands together. So, are you ready to talk about how it applies to the letter? I was thinking about that, Candace said. Were you talking about the part of the book where... Hey, no spoiling it, Tori said. Tori, you're not even going to read it, Brandon said. How do you know? She elbowed him. What, are you going to tell me that I'm too old for it? She looked at Candace. Brandon's been telling me and Mom how there aren't any boy books or any girl books. If that's true, then there aren't any old people or young people books either. Candace glanced at Brandon. Did this have to do with the conversation they'd had at the library about boy books and girl books? Brandon flashed Candace a quick smile, then turned to his sister. Are you really going to read it? Maybe, if it interests me. Candace pulled a letter from the book, then slid the Westing game to Tori. He popped the last of his cookie into his mouth. Fine, let's go upstairs so we don't spoil it, he said, standing up from the table. So what's your big revelation about the letter? Candace asked as they climbed the stairs. In the Weston game, most of the information you need to solve the puzzle is right at the beginning of the story, in the will, he said. I bet the letter is doing the same. Makes sense, I guess, Candace said, thinking it through. Siobhan's memorial page stated that she loved the Weston game. Maybe Parker wanted to make sure someone linked his puzzle to that book. They entered the computer room and sat down beside each other on the edge of the bed. Like I said at the park, the entire letter is filled with clues. His grin widened. Read the letter again. I've read it 1,000 times. Just read it again, he said. Candace huffed, but quickly scanned the letter. Okay, so how many numbered clues do you see? He asked. Just one. He clapped his hands together. That's what I thought at first, too. Then we saw that bench at the park. She loved all. He slid closer to her and traced his finger along the page until he found what he was looking for. The words directly preceding that sentence here are, Candace sighed, 4. Exactly. That had me thinking about the Weston game. And I thought, what if he didn't mean 4 like F-O-R? What if he meant F-O-U-R, the number? Candace opened her mouth to argue. Then she closed her mouth. Do you see what I'm talking about? He asked, his pitch rising. Candace was too busy reading the letter. She went line by line and tried to recognize the words in her head. 1. Siobhan's father loved tennis, but he grew up idolizing a team in another sport. 2. Leanne Washington's days as a volunteer at her church did more for Lambert's children than most people will ever know. 3. She was truly greater than the sum of her parts. 4. She loved all. She snapped her fingers. Can I borrow a sheet of paper to jot this down? I already did it, Brandon said. He walked to the computer and opened a file. So that's got me thinking. We found 3 of the 4 clues. The Luling Oilers is the first clue. Leanne Washington's work with the Women's Missionary Circle is the second, and the park bench is the 4th. Maybe it's the 4th, she said. It's not dated. He nodded. True, but for sure we haven't found the 3rd clue. She was truly greater than the sum of her parts, he said. But maybe it's not something we're supposed to find. Maybe it's not a physical thing. Candace repeated the clue in her head. She was truly greater than the sum of her parts. And that's where I'm going to stop. And I challenge you to go back to the video on chapter 6 and listen to the letter again and see if you can start to realize some of the clues that James Parker might have hidden throughout the letter. If you have read the Weston game, it might be a little bit easier for you to kind of see those clues. And if not, I think you would really enjoy the Weston game. So again, if you find a way to get to that book, you should definitely read it.